Good evening, everybody. Thank you to those of you who are here at Town Hall in person. This is going to be a recorded session, so I appreciate everybody, if you can, speak one at a time. Preferably, as I said, at the tables where there are microphones so that the residents at home can pick up what's said. But that's up to people's comfort levels, obviously. This is yet again another conversation about the MBTA communities requirement. We're getting into the meat of the matter now, so I'm going to have some real options for you all to weigh in on and to discuss. So this will be a little bit different from the previous one because I want it to be a little bit more structured in the beginning. A lot of these faces are familiar, so I'm going to go through some things that you've heard before. But this is for people who are entering the process right now and might not have the background information on what is MBTA communities, what is the requirement, what is the formula. So I appreciate the patience of those who've already heard this, but the first 10 minutes or so are just going to be a repeat of last time. There's going to be an opportunity to ask policy and procedure questions, but then we're going to get into the fun stuff of working with maps and telling me pros, cons about different options that I'm going to lay in front of you tonight. Tonight we're going to focus purely on the area within the radius because that's the biggest beef that we have to carve out under the MBTA communities regulations. There's a half-mile radius from the train station that we need to consider for 40% of the entirety of the zoning district that we're creating tonight. I'm going to ask that you submit thoughts on the pros and cons for each district. You might really, really dislike certain options, but I do ask that you wait until I finish presenting them before you give me your thoughts on them. I want to hear them, but just if you can defer till the end point. So what is MBTA communities? For those who aren't familiar, this is a law that was established in 2021. It's Section 3A of the Zoning Act for Massachusetts. Zoning governs what can be constructed, built within certain areas of a given municipality. So if something's in a single-family zone, all you can build is single-family residences. If something's agriculturally zoned, all you can have there is a farm that produces goods or services. So that's what we're really talking about today is zoning. It doesn't mean that the town itself is going to build anything, that we're going to construct anything, that there are any shovel-ready projects that are currently on the horizon. We're here talking to you residents to get feedback on what is an acceptable place within the town that meets this formula that we're given from the state, where we can lay down a district that allows for multifamily housing near a train station. That's the intent of the MBTA communities regulation. What's the role of town staff? We're informing the residents of what the requirements are under the regulation. We're going to provide additional explanations and supplemental materials, a lot of which you have on your tables tonight. I'm trying to engage residents here to talk to you face-to-face, to listen to your concerns and your thoughts about this process. And we're right in between this step and the compilation of two different options. My hope is to have two different options for residents to vote on at town meeting this autumn. You can vote yes to the one district, yes to the other district, or no to any districts. That's entirely up to you all as residents. That's a power that's given to you by the nature of this municipal structure in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So our staff, the main reason that we're trying to do this is, number one, it's the law. We're trying to get the town into compliance with the law. And number two, we want to preserve access to funds that are restricted or that will lose points in the scoring process. They'll be more difficult for us to attain. I do have a list of all the grant programs on the table that you're free to go over at your leisure. It explains whether or not we're eligible for them right now, whether we're ineligible, and how much the maximum award amount is. That way you can kind of get a feeling for what could be on the table potentially, but it's obviously a max figure. So what can happen if a town votes against a compliant district? I'm not going to play the video tonight because I think that it's a rapidly shifting legal environment, and I just want to stick to the basics of what's in the legislation and what the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities has dictated. If you're not complying with Section 3A, municipalities will be ineligible for grants from MassWorks and Housing Works infrastructure programs. Each of those grant programs is capped at $5 million per year. Sometimes they go over that for certain projects, but for more or less a good figure is $5 million for the cap for each of those. The Housing Choice Initiative, Foxborough is ineligible for anyway, so that's not something that will affect us. And the final program listed in the legislation itself is the Local Capital Projects Fund. Now, I spoke to EOHLC about this particular project because I'm not familiar with it myself. The way that the state legislature uses those funds is that they divide them among all the different housing authorities throughout the Commonwealth. I asked, well, would our housing authority be affected by this? I was told no, they have no intention of actually using that piece of the legislation against municipalities that don't comply. Our housing authority will not suffer because of noncompliance, from what I've been told orally over the phone, but nonetheless from the person who's responsible for the program. We also face civil enforcement action by the Attorney General's office. They're suing Milton right now for noncompliance because they passed their deadline to comply with the regulation. We don't know whether they're going to sue the second round of municipalities that decide not to comply with the law. We don't know exactly how much to expect those legal expenses to add up to, but it would probably be considerable whenever the state AG gets involved. And finally, reduce consideration for 13 discretionary grant programs across multiple different state departments. I listed those again in the grant programs sheet. I gave a little bit of information about what the programs fund, whether we're eligible right now. At the end of the day, it's about $16 million on the table as a maximum cap. Obviously, we would not receive grants in all of those programs in any given year. That's an absolute max cap, but I was asked to provide an absolute max cap of what the grant effects to the municipality would be. So, haven't we already voted for this? This is a big question that I've been getting around town. Yes, residents did vote no at the Maytown meeting on an article to approve the district that's outlined to the right on the map. That doesn't mean that the law is waived. We still have until the end of the calendar year to become compliant. So this will be kind of the last chance for the town to gain compliance or to vote no and decide that on a wait and see approach and take that risk as well. So what's the process and timeline? In August, I just wanted to listen to residents what went wrong the last time, what are some of your overarching concerns, what are some of the reasons why you've either voted no for technical reasons or maybe philosophical reasons, and I got a lot of really, really good feedback on that. In September, my goal is to narrow the options for consideration into 2 different scenarios, so that's what we're doing tonight. I'll also be sending out informal surveys as part of this process, and that's going to start as soon as this week. Hopefully I can get something on the street this week to push through the town's social media. In October, I'm going to finalize the feedback into 2 final compliant options. I'm going to have a lot of data behind those options in terms of expected revenues through our assessor's calculations of potential new growth, as well as all of the expenditures that we're going to need to provide in terms of additional services and infrastructure costs. So, here's the formula for Foxborough. I have this printed on purple sheets in front of you on the table. Last time around, people wanted me to return to this slide a lot, so I thought it was good for you to have it right in front of you. That way you can reference it throughout tonight's conversation. The formula for Foxborough is a land area of 50 acres, at least 40% of which has to be located within a half mile of our commuter rail station. 50% of that has to be contiguous parcels. The sub-districts have to be at least 5 acres in size. So if we decide to do this zoning district over more than one location that's not contiguous, like say we do the minimum 40% within the guidelines, we'd have to find at least 5 acres worth of parcels elsewhere to form these sub-districts. The unit capacity that was given to us after that commuter rail station designation was made in November of 23. The unit capacity is 1,152. Because this is zoning, it's allowed by right. That doesn't mean that's going to be built. There are strategies that we can talk about to mitigate some of the context of loss. But that maximum works out to 23 units per acre. The district can be layered over existing uses, not wetlands, rivers, or public infrastructure, and there can be no restrictions on resident age or unit size or number of bedrooms. What's not required in the legislation, these don't have to be affordable units. Foxborough has met the state's requirement for affordability. So these can be entirely market rate units if that's what the residents decide. You can also decide if you want to implement up to 10% of the units have to be affordable, but that's capped in the legislation at 10%. There are no restrictions against allowing other types of development as well. So this can be a commercial or mixed use district as well by right, if you decide to incorporate that into the parameters. I'm not going to go through this for the people at home. There's a document that I'm going to upload. I thought I already had to choosefoxborough.gov, where I'm storing all of the documents related to this process. But in front of you, you have a much more legible copy of this, and it's also available on that website for folks at home or folks that want to reference it later. I've received a ton of really, really good questions. Probably the biggest one is, how to mitigate the context change, or at least extend it over a period of time so it's not, boom, a brand new neighborhood out of nowhere. Another big one is, can you move the radius to a different area? And you cannot. It's fixed where the train station is. That's defined in the statute. And how did the station get designated a commuter rail station? Who made that decision? And as I was mentioning before this presentation, that was an MBTA decision. They ran a pilot program that lasted for a year, and they found that the ridership from the station exceeded what they wanted to see to make it a permanent commuter rail station. That meant that we had enhanced metrics under our formula that we needed to comply with. But the most up-to-date formula is on the table in front of you. So at this point, I think it's a good time, if there are any questions about the legislation or the regulations, the formula, any of that policy wonk stuff, any definitions that you might need, that I said a term that you don't understand, I'm happy to address that now. Sure.
I'm confused. This is all new to me anyway, but you said it's not low-income housing?
No.
Well, who are they to say, if people are paying market rent, who are they to say it has to be within a half a mile of the train station?
So,
did I have that wrong?
No, you don't get that wrong. So the question was, if it's not affordable housing, why would it be, why would the state want to encourage the production of more market rate housing by train stations? Am I paraphrasing correctly? Okay. It follows the theory of supply and demand, which has been borne out in data from other areas, that if you build more supply, then people will move from existing units into that new supply if that's a desirable place and they want to move there and they have the additional income. And that will unleash another unit onto the market that's lower rate. Over time, that provides a declining median rent. So even market rate units, even luxury units, will over time drop the price of housing just because there's more supply on the market. So that's where the state's coming from. It's not something that, I'm not going to stand here and argue necessarily, because data can be different from place to place, and a lot of it's philosophical too, and I can't do much about that. But that's the context that led the state to make this legislation.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I just have a quick question. I was told by someone that the town recently has received about $9 million in grants. So looking at these grants and these numbers, I was kind of told they scale it back. If you've gotten a lot of money as a town, you're probably not going to get the 5 million, the 5 million, the 500,000, because it kind of has to be spread around.
Yep, and that's true.
Okay, so, yeah.
So just to rephrase for folks at home, that was a question about, because the town has recently received a significant amount of money under some of these grant programs that will be either restricted to us or less easy to attain, wouldn't that mean that we're less likely to lose out on them in the near term? And yes, the answer is absolutely yes. They do like to spread grant funds around the state. So if you get a big chunk of money from a grant program this year, you probably aren't going to get another bite at that apple for like 3, 4, 5 years. Okay. So yeah, absolutely.
Perfect.
Yeah. Any other policy questions before we dig in? All right. So the first step is areas to restrict development. The map behind me is the developable area that EOHLC, the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, they told us that these are the areas where we can implement zoning within that half-mile radius. And like I said tonight, we're only focused on the radius tonight because I just want to dig into the technical aspects. As you can see, there are a lot of areas that are kind of hatched on this map. You can't put the zoning over infrastructure. You can't put it over wetlands. And you can't put it over town-owned property. So there's conservation land to the far right. The town actually owns the Gillette Stadium itself, so you can't implement the zoning there. And then you see a number of wetlands, the river that flows between the train station and the Gillette area. You see a lot of undevelopable land to the north of this district. Also, because Walpole is a different municipality, they cut it off at the very top. So that's why it's not a perfect circle, because within the half-mile boundary, it's a different municipality here. So I listened to a big number of stakeholders. I think the first one that I'm going to talk about is the craft group recommendations, and these are the 3 that were given just within the half-mile radius. So to the right, you're going to see up north, the largest yellow bubble is the terminals building, Foxborough Terminals on Route 1. So right now that's being used for movie productions. So that's one area that was given to us for consideration. The area to the south of that is the Ashcroft properties. Those abut single-family homes. There are a lot of wetlands in that area as well. And then on the other side of the tracks between Patriot Place businesses and Route 1 is the third area. And that's those are the surface lots between Route 1 and Patriot Place. So those are the 3 areas that the craft group gave to the town for consideration in spring.
Can I just clarify that?
Mm-hmm.
We actually did not give those to the
No?
town. No, the town decided without our input, so.
For the yellow patches? Oh, all right.
Yeah.
What did she say?
That was a town suggestion given their holdings.
Oh, I see.
So that's new context for me. The blue bubble that you see up top was the proposed district that the town ultimately took to town meeting, and those are surface lots that are across Route 1. They're to the north of Route 1. So next, I've spoken to you all. I've spoken at veterans events and seniors events and at the library, just talking to residents to try to get feedback. What I've heard is absolutely no to anything in this area up to Route 1. The context there is single-family homes, and people are they're concerned about access. They're concerned about the level of traffic volumes off of cul-de-sacs. They're concerned about the wetlands areas and disruption there, and screening, whether or not such a large-sized development could be potentially screened from those subsequent uses. So I colored it red on that map. I also want to color orange areas that are insufficient in acreage and non-contiguous. The largest of these scraps of land is the middle area on the north along Route 1. That's 4.7 acres, so that's just shy of that contiguous 5-acre sub-district amount. So all of these little orange patches are, for all intents and purposes, ineligible to be included in the zoning district. And that leaves the remaining tan area for consideration for what we're going to talk about tonight, is the tan area. So I want to talk about the compliant districts within the radius, pros and cons. I took a stab at 4 different options. One of them is the one that you voted on at town meeting in spring, so you're very familiar with that district. The second one is an option that I discussed with you all at the last meeting, which is a 35-acre patch within the radius and sub-districts layered over other areas. The third and fourth options tonight are new. One concentrates on economic development value and maximizing the land value per acre in the area. The other one is the lowest impact scenario that's possible. So we're going to write the pros and the cons that people have for us on the whiteboard. I'm going to leave the developable area map here because I want you all have Post-it notes on your table and some pencils. So feel free to make notes and stick them on that map. If there's anything that I said that you disagree with, that you don't want to publicly say, or that you have really strong feelings and you want to have reconsidered, please put it up there. I do want to consider all thoughts.
Okay.
All right. So let's dig in. Option 1. Would you mind being my Vanna White, perchance?
Catherine, would you mind if I just move this board, because it's really hard to...
Yeah, absolutely, please.
I can't see.
Yeah, it does fall apart. I can help.
That's all right, I got it.
The legs come undone. They're like little joints with springs.
One sitting here.
All right, well, things are getting set up. Option one was presented at Springtown meeting. Residents voted no for a number of reasons, some of them just opposition to the statute itself, which is justifiable and you're right to do. The other reason they voted no was for technical reasons or because of concerns that they had with the district itself. So tonight I want to talk about technical concerns of the district itself. You're also free to give me some of your feedback when it comes to philosophical differences, but that's not going to necessarily assist me in carving things out at this point, because now is the time when I'm trying to form the options that are compliant. So let's start with the pros. Is there anybody that has a pro for this particular district? The context on your map, I tried to label things with little logos. The context for this, there's an enterprise rent-a-car building right here. The rest of it is surface lots. There are two tiny little parcels in the northeast of that purple area, and those are owned by different individuals. The rest of the land is owned by the Kraft Group, and it's predominantly football parking and event parking. So that's the overall context of this particular zone. Anybody want to kick off the thoughts?
Sure.
Sure, go right ahead.
Here we go.
Thank you.
What is a pro? What do you think it's good about it?
I think it's in a good place,
Okay.
okay?
Because.
Oh, you want us to write on it?
No,
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
no, I will write for you. I will
Okay.
write this one.
Okay. I just think that that's a decent area.
That it's a decent area.
Now, I may change my mind after I
Sure,
see some of the
absolutely.
others, okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Like as in less impact to like single family
Exactly.
homes.
Sure.
Exactly.
Okay.
But is there, so I know what the area you're talking about,
Mhm.
so there's an enterprise, this is
Right.
along Route 1, it's by the
Mhm.
stadium.
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so less impacts to traffic was the next comment. Another, or single-family homes. Traffic also, there's less impact because our area of Route 1 is built for overflow traffic for massive events, so there's not going to be an appreciable difference.
And I'm sorry, does this meet the requirement for
Yes.
all of the acre? Okay.
Everything I'm showing you tonight meets the compliance metrics.
But in one area, like you
Yep.
don't need to spread it out?
Yeah, well, option two is like,
This option though is like.
this option is all encompassed. This is one zone, so that's probably a pro, that it's all in one location.
Okay, yeah.
Is that mostly Kraft's parking lots?
Yes. Mhm.
Is there any consideration as to what you do with the cars during events?
That's a good question.
I'm not prepared to answer.
No,
that.
that's fine.
That's
So,
an option.
yeah, so they would have a couple of options. They could choose to develop the entirety of the site and structure parking underneath. That's very, very, very expensive. Typically, it's well over 3 times the cost of surface lots, and usually much more than that. And the other option is to not develop the entirety of it and to leave space for parking, either in front or behind the new structures. A third option that's pretty common these days is podium-style parking, and that's where you structure kind of like a mini underground parking garage on the first floor, and then any uses are above. That's usually a cheaper option to ensure whatever parking ratios are required.
Yeah, but when he has an event, especially a music event,
Right.
he's got, those lots are totally full.
Yeah. There is a delta. We did a parking capacity study not long ago. I think it was last autumn, wasn't it? And the results of that showed that there is a delta of several thousand units that they can remove from their surface lot holdings and still meet our requirements for them. So they could probably do most of the capacity, not necessarily all of it. You know, it would have to be dependent on context and exactly how many new units and the number of parking spaces that those new units require too, because you got to add that to the parking needs. Yeah, it's a good question, very good question. So would that be framed as a con then, or a pro? Removing parking for the
I'd
games
say
would
it's
probably be
a
a
con.
con, yeah.
Depends who you are. Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. Any other cons that people want to express about this? I heard two at previous meetings. One of them is the lack of good, ready pedestrian infrastructure to cross over Route 1. If it's built as fully multifamily housing without services on that side of the street, you might get people walking across the street in greater volume, and that could be a dangerous situation given the volume of traffic in that area. Another concern that I heard from a previous session was that this could be a potentially shovel-ready site. It would be easier to develop than other options, potentially. So the immediate impact could be a lot larger in scale.
That's true, too, yeah.
So those were two of the comments that I heard previously from different people. Any other?
No. Well, these apartments, will they be taxed at a full rate, or will they be subsidized?
I mean, that's up to residents. The state, like I said, limits it at 10% affordable units. So at least 90% of the units are going to be market rate units. So that means that the assessed value is going to be quite high. Yeah.
But you don't have to have it.
You don't have to have affordability if you don't want to. It's not a requirement of the program.
Did I understand this correctly, that if this area being shovel-ready, it doesn't mean that, in order for us to comply, it doesn't mean that construction would begin, and even if it did, it doesn't mean that it would be 1,152 units necessarily?
No, not necessarily at all. Personally, my preference is for mixed use, allowing both simultaneously, like commercial use as well as residential. That way, I'll just say it because pretty much all that land is craft group owned. That's allowable under people's comments to me. That way they could choose either commercial use or residential use. Both are allowed by right. All right, so option 2. This was what I discussed with you all at the last meeting. This is a way to mitigate and extend some of the new housing construction over an amount of time. And it allows for a couple of different scenarios that can be kind of mixed and matched. If you zone over Patriot Place, the two parcels that comprise the actual built location, 35 acres would include just the buildings themselves and the surrounding parcel fragments. 28 That's 28.4 acres, I apologize. And then if you include the surface lots that are adjacent to Route 1, that would yield 35 acres. Now, either one of those options would be enough to satisfy the minimum requirements for within the 0.5 mile radius. I went through the unit counts at the last one, and that information I can't say off the top of my head, but it's all saved to the choosefoxborough.gov website, where I showed my math and I just walked through the assumptions that I'm making of how much is developable, what I think the maximum unit count would be, what a realistic scenario would be, and what a low build scenario would be. So, we should do option 2 next, yes. So, this is an incomplete model, right? This is a starting place. So there isn't a lot that we can do in terms of pros and cons, but I do want to discuss it anyway. Again, this would be breaking it into a main district and then sub-districts that are located over existing multifamily housing areas within the town. So what are some of the pros and what are some of the cons? Feel free to shout out any.
I don't quite understand, would require additional acreage to be zoned?
Elsewhere in the town, yes, because this isn't the 50 acres that you need.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And I think it is important to point out that most of the residential uses within the town are 15 units per acre or less. There's 1 or 2, I think, that are a little bit more than that, but none that are at 25 units or 23 units per acre right now. So there would be a delta of units even if you were to zone over the multifamily developments that are already here.
Are there multifamily developments in these areas?
No, not within the radius. There's no multifamily in Foxborough along Route 1 right now, unless you count hotels.
Yes.
So you want some feedback on this, right?
Yes, on this one.
I'm on no on this one. I don't like that idea of the other possibility.
What's the other possibility?
Requiring additional acreage to be zoned for multifamily.
Oh, okay. So as a con, I would say it requires sub-districts. You don't get it all done in one bite with this scenario.
Right. Thank you. So good when somebody puts the good words in it.
I would think if you did this one, that the increased density is just, I think, too high.
Okay.
You know, 23 units per acre. I mean, I just, not for a town like Foxborough. I don't know if we choose
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, the context is,
Yeah.
I would say in most of Foxborough, the context is out of place. I think here it would be a little bit more contextually appropriate, just because the height of the buildings in Patriot Place already go up 4 or 5 stories. So it wouldn't be a dramatic change in the context there. It would be additional units that come with additional requirements for services, but it wouldn't be, I guess, from like a visual perspective, you probably wouldn't notice it as much as you would if it were in an existing multifamily area, if they just raised it and built it that dense.
But that could be a possibility in a multifamily area.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be, okay.
Okay.
So that would be a
So
con.
required density would be too high? Is
I
that what
think
you're
so.
saying?
I think
Okay.
I think it's out of place. Yeah.
That's a good point. So how many stories do we think this would be? I'm sorry,
We don't-
So the way that we wrote the zoning ordinance in the last one was 3 stories. We need to do the numbers to make sure that that allows the maximum unit count. The state will knock it down if that's not enough. But 4 stories would more than suffice. I've done much denser projects in other areas that were, doing the math, a little bit like just under 100 units per acre, and that's 5 stories. So you don't need the stories necessarily. It all depends on like unit count and stuff like that. Yeah. Any pros? I'm going to throw in a pro, which is the reason that I threw this strategy out to begin with, and that was because people had requested some way to make the development incremental, so that units are added a little more slowly, they're absorbed more slowly, and in an already built environment like this, you're probably looking at a slower evolution of development. So the surface lots, if you include those could be developed tomorrow potentially, right? Not tomorrow because you have to go through the permitting process and all that, but they're allowed by right. So they have a much shorter path to development than the area over Patriot Place, which would require engineering. Is the structure sound to build on top of as is? Do you need to actually demolish and build upward? Those are all questions that would be asked during that process. So again, I did the maximum case, the moderate case, and the low case for build estimates for this district online. So feedback from the residents last time made me develop 2 other possibilities for single districts. And they're primarily within this half-mile radius. If neither of them is acceptable to you, we can return to this model and then go in different directions with it. It's a starting point, and we can go elsewhere. The first one, I will say outright that from what I've heard, I don't think that this will be something that you'll be in favor of. Just given the feedback I've received so far. But half of my title is economic development, so I can't ignore assessed values. I can't ignore the economic returns. And when you're looking at a mixed use, mixed income type of setting, what you're going to get out of that is a lot more tax value than what you get out of comparable lower density uses. And if you do it right and you allow for that mixture of commercial in with the multifamily, what you're doing is you're supplementing the town's budget so that they can provide better school services and better road conditions and things like that to cul-de-sacs. The city of Dallas recently released their study, and the single-family homes comprise over 1/3 of the properties down, or the acreage within the city, and it only supplies 4% of the town budget. The mixed income areas, the mixed use areas, actually supplied 40% of the budget, and they're less than 1% of the land area. So when I'm talking about supplementing other land uses and allowing for higher quality services, that's what I'm talking about. It sounds counterintuitive, but the way that assessed values work what you're doing is you're taking an incredible amount of tax value, particularly from the commercial, but multifamily typically holds its own also. I haven't run the numbers yet, so I can't give you an exact value here. But what I will tell you is that I will do those numbers if tonight you don't decide absolutely not. And that's your prerogative too, you know? So I went through the calculations just for the maximum tonight, because I just wanted to talk about maximum stuff. Reason being that once I get into the nitty-gritty of a 50-acre district, this is a lot more challenging and takes a lot longer for me to put together. So I want to give you the maximum unit count. That way I'm ripping the Band-Aid off quicker, and we can talk about, you know, what those lower build scenarios could look like later on if you'd like. So I calculated all the acreage by different parcel use types within this economic development case. It extends from just shy of the last hotel at Patriot Place, and it extends all the way to the commuter rail station and up to Route 1. So it's kind of an elongated, not quite rectangle with a fan at the top. What this would allow for is potentially a secondary spine of Patriot Place with additional retail. By the train station, it would probably attract things like a pharmacy with grab-and-go options. It would attract something like a bank with an ATM because people are going to want to spend money. It's going to attract different retail uses that lead new visitors and people attending games and events into what's already there at Patriot Place. So there's a lot of value that could be added to something like this. Of course, when you make anything by right, you allow for potentially different designs and different plans and different visions than what we're talking about tonight. So, you know, you've got to also weigh that in. It could be something that looks different from what residents in Foxborough want to see. Opening it up is, in my opinion, high risk, high reward. But it's a conversation that I want to have tonight with you all. So, lay into me. I know you want to.
Would this be open to light industrial as well?
It would not, no. Not in this overlay. S1 I don't think allows for it either, does it?
No.
No, no light industrial.
What does ADA stand for?
The ADA lot is like the handicap lot to get into events.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Like, I like the idea of mixed use, but
Mhm.
I can't imagine that I would want to live, I mean, I appreciate that I'm close to the stadium, but I wouldn't want to live at the stadium.
Sure.
Just the noise, the traffic, I don't know.
Okay.
I can't imagine I'd be quick to want to rent over there.
Right. The type of renter that you're going to get close to the station is going to be a very different type of renter than one that you would choose in one of the existing multifamily areas. So I would put that as a con, as it extends the stadium area, like, you know, the active area, like the noise and the kind of the party vibes. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
So how many units would go up?
Congestion and
So the maximum unit load for this scenario and this is my calculation, so it's always going to be an estimate here, is 871, which is down from the cap of 1,152, and that's for housing only. If you incorporate mixed use, and that's assuming a 100% mixed use rate, which again, that's a big assumption to make, it's 653 units. So that's a little over half of what the unit requirement is if it's all mixed use. So chances are somewhere between those two. Unless there are some considerations on Patriot Place or with parking, because chances are some of that parking would have to be structured or underground to make something like that work. And that could lead to lower density overall. Those are just financial considerations, and I don't have a crystal ball for those. All right, any other comments? Thoughts? Yeah.
Oh, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. He hasn't talked yet.
Take away football parking, you can expand somewhere else. But this proposal, you're taking medical parking. What are you gonna do about that?
So this specific one does not take medical parking away. The medical lot is south. I'm sure that people do park for the medical uses elsewhere within Patriot Place lot or the football lots. But the designated area is south of Patriot Place, so it is out of this footprint.
Catherine?
Yes.
Just to clarify, it does take out of play the parking that's provided for the medical employees.
Okay, that's good to know. So it does take, just for everybody at home, it takes away parking for medical center employees. Anything that we discuss in this area is probably going to take away parking that needs to be made up somehow else. So either that leads to lower density than the maximum figures that I'm supplying, because they'll want to keep surface lots intact or podium-style construction to make sure that they can meet their parking ratios, or it'll require putting parking underground, structuring in a garage that's above ground, whatever the case may be. When I talk about max unit load, I'm talking parking is entirely underground to allow the entire site to be developed to its full potential, which is not a likely outcome. But I want to be honest with you in terms of my honest belief of what is the absolute max that could be built.
Catherine, wouldn't that, having it on that side, wouldn't it increase the congestion in that area, though, with the other shops? That is to the left of where Hobby Lobby is and everything like that. Sometimes it's just so congested getting in and out of there. I'm just wondering.
Yeah. No, and
That might be a con.
That's a con.
If you have people living there in multifamily units, I don't know.
Sure.
That's a good point. Yeah,
I'm trying- yeah.
I agree with that.
Most of the people who are drawn to multifamily housing are people who like walkable environments. So a lot of their like day-to-day stuff is probably going to be within walking distance, like Trader Joe's. They're going to walk there because it's right there, you know. However, they're probably going to commute by car. You know, even though the train station's right there, that doesn't mean that you're going to necessarily attract only people who work in Boston and don't have cars. That's an unlikely scenario.
Yeah,
I mean,
and that's.
I guarantee that we would fill those, like, the apartment units, like the residential units, like the
There-
800, I mean.
Yeah, there is no.
Acre players that are, you know.
Yeah.
Because, years ago, I lived on Route 1 in the preserves, and certainly, I mean.
Another question about that.
But, now the homeowner.
The accessibility of the
Not
train.
necessarily,
the
but
schedule.
yeah, I just wonder how we
Could
can
we
guarantee.
change
What
it?
happens if we're not really able to?
Because-
Sure.
I mean, market rent is high.
Yes, it is. Market rent is very high. So that's an excellent question. So for people who are at home, the question was about whether or not we could potentially fill these units or whether some of them could remain vacant. When developers are preparing their plans, one of the first things that they look at is like a CoStar report or similar, something that like goes through the numbers of like comparable developments. What they're looking for is like how many months did it take the new build next door until their units were completely filled. And our region has recently had a lot of success with filling units, basically because people can't afford to live in Boston anymore. So even engineers and doctors are moving south or away. So what we're starting to see is people who want to live in our communities because they can afford the rent, even though it's a luxury product, they can afford it here as opposed to Boston. So I'm not going to say that there won't be an issue with vacancy either now or in the future, but typically developers don't want to invest their money if they're not going to get a return. So they usually do their homework before they make the decision. Any more thoughts?
Yeah, there was another point, I'm trying to, at one of the meetings I attended, about the train station not being quite accessible to a lot of people to get into Boston. A lot of people, it wasn't convenient, they had to go to Mansfield, it was a lot faster, so if this was to be developed, the town was to accept it, would the MBTA, would there be talk about making it, the schedule a little bit better for people?
Sure.
I mean,
So-
that's an important thing.
It is very important. So the question was, if we were to increase the density around our train station and we had more people that were using it to commute into Boston, would there be any changes perceived at the MBTA level? I don't have authority over the MBTA, so I can't give you an exact answer. But I can tell you that Philip Eng recently said that he was going to look at longer night services on certain lines. So he seems to be the type of person that recognizes that more people will ride public transportation if it's reliable. So my hope is that we can hold on to him and continue that path as opposed to the people who are just constantly worried about the budget. But we don't know how long we're going to have him in a leadership role. We don't know what their decision would ultimately be. A lot of them look at the numbers to make decisions whether or not to add another train or not. But it is a concern. There may not be adequate trains. We might see more people hopping in their car and driving to Mansfield.
Right.
Isn't what this is all about?
That is what it's all about, yeah, yeah,
I mean, seriously,
Mhm.
we're not gonna increase.
Right.
right. Yeah, it's a conversation that we would have. If we were to be made aware of a new development project or several new development projects that would substantially increase the population around the train station, we would start having those conversations from the moment it comes into our office with the MBTA. Like, what do you guys suggest in terms of increasing services? Will it be adequate? Can you add more times in the morning and evening during peak commuter times? Those would be conversations that we have regularly with our partners at the state level, but again, we aren't in control over that. Yeah, good question, great question. All right, any other thoughts on this scenario before I dive into the last one? All right. So the last option is the lowest impact scenario. That's what I'm hearing from a lot of people. How can you get that number as small as possible, that maximum number? Somebody who attended the last session referenced putting it over Revolution's practice fields, which is outside of the radius. But you know, if there are practice fields for Gillette that are within, so you can actually find a 51-acre district that encompasses Patriot Place itself, the hospital area parking, which gets to your question and concern, and the field house and the practice fields that are below. Almost the entirety of this is within that radius. The field house and the last hotel is not. So that's the lowest impact scenario because it's all built and developed. That doesn't mean that it can't be moved. It can't be, demolished and built up, but it would take a longer time and it would be a more gradual process again. So for the low impact scenario, crunching the numbers of acres that are considered developable and not developable, I came to a max unit count for housing only of 548 units and for mixed use of 411 units, which is very much below that max cap of 1,152 units. So, when last session, people were very, very, very concerned about the lowest possible impact. So this is the scenario that I came up with for that. So that's option 4. Feel free to weigh in on that or any questions.
Can you show us?
Sure, I know that I didn't do a good job of outlining these because I wanted to show the measurement at the bottom and it just doesn't clear out. So it goes over the built area here.
Okay.
And then down and around the practice fields and the field house and up.
Okay. Well, they're gonna
Okay.
spread those out.
Okay.
Catherine, would you repeat the number of units? Again?
Sure. And again, these are estimates assuming that what's built is up there and what isn't built. The maximum, if it's housing only, is 548 units. The maximum, if it's mixed use all the way, is 411 units.
But would we, if we voted on this one, just so people understand, can we vote on the 548 or the 411? I mean, who
Yeah, that would be.
controls that? The
Yeah, so that would be a
developer or the
conversation about.
residents?
Yeah. That would be a conversation about whether or not you want to allow for housing only or housing and commercial, which is my preference is to make things either housing or commercial by right. That way it can get developed by market conditions. But if you allow for mixed use, that reduces the amount of units that you can build. If you cap it at like 4 stories, the first story is filled up with retail, you reduce the buildable units by 25%.
Do we have any idea how many empty retail spaces there are at Patriots Place currently? Which would make maybe commercial, this mix,
So
not so.
there's turnover, right? So
Yeah,
any
just a lot.
they're usually like last time I went through there were like 3 or 4, but there's often like something coming in, something leaving. That's the nature of retail. Most acutely in the middle of the spine, like where it's not so close to the stadium and also not so close to the hotels. Those are usually the retail stores that turn over the most. But 3 or 4 storefronts, I'd say. But again, that changes constantly.
I like this one because of the low impact.
Okay, so pro is low impact.
Sounds so great here. I just want-
I guess personally, I'm not for any of them until we have an impact study done.
Yep.
To see how it's going to affect financially this town,
Right.
the schools, the police, the
Yeah.
fire, everything. And I think, and I personally would like to see what happens with Milton. If Milton wins,
And that's.
and I know it's a huge.
I heard that a lot. I heard that a lot at the last one, and that's absolutely your prerogative to do, is to vote no across the board again at town meeting, and just wait and see what happens with Milton's case, whether or not the state is found to have exercised overreach in any way, and that's totally your prerogative. When it comes to the economic impacts, I absolutely want to get to that, but I need to know where it's going to be before I get into the numbers, because otherwise I'm spending every waking moment doing this and not attending to anything else on my desk.
So there's a chance we're going to go to town meeting and not know, because we haven't voted on one of these options, what the impact would be on the town financially. Is
Right.
that what you're saying?
Well, I want to rule some out tonight, potentially. That's my hope, is to get at least one or two of these off the radar. That way I can concentrate my skills into doing realistic modeling, you know?
But I think what Catherine is asking is, which of these plans gives you the less heartburn, thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Because, you know, we have a lot of options, but she's being spread really thin. And she's trying to pursue all of these different, so we'd like to know which ones are more desirable or give you the least heartburn.
Right. And I think, like, I mean, obviously, any more questions right now are wonderful. But if you could just, like, write thoughts on the Post-it notes, and you can stick them anywhere on the map, on any of the options, because there's a lot that was said, and I think a lot that was unsaid. And I want to make sure that I capture anything that you want to get out there before I'm able to narrow it down. But I think I'm going to let you guys think and write and put your thoughts together for the next, let's say like 5 minutes. And then we can get back together at the end and go over the 4 scenarios again and see where we stand in terms of which direction you want me to crunch the numbers on. Okay? That's true. People who are not here, I'm not going to make a decision tonight, right? I'm going to wait and see if you contact me as well. So my contact information is below. For anybody that's at home, please reach out. Email's usually best. That way I have a written record of it and I can get to all the detail. But I want to hear from people at home too, and people who weren't able to attend tonight. That way I can make my decision over the next week, which ones I'm going to really flesh out from an economic perspective.
Kathy, I have a question about the crafts. What do they think? And can they be at some of these meetings? Or would they be a representative?
One is here tonight, yeah.
Are you
I'm
from the
a
craft
planning and
group?
project manager with the craft group, yes.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so,
Primarily here to listen, just so I know
Okay.
what options are
Right.
being discussed, and
Yeah.
then we can bring them back to our team and
yeah, I think I'd like to hear from the crafts too at like the next session, if that's enough time for you.
I believe Dan plans on being here at the next session.
Yeah, because I think that it would be great to hear what their vision is for this area as well. And especially if you have like any kind of economic data that you can supply to us to show, like, you know, the maximum unit load, the revenues that you estimate coming from the project to the town, and the net increase I'll take care of the net increase of services, because that's something that you probably couldn't calculate. I have to work with department heads on
Years
that.
back, when we were discussing housing in various areas, we did have a market study done, so we have a lot of that information about the surrounding area and what it can support.
Sure.
And the results of that, so.
Okay, great. So they have, for people at home, they do have market studies from a project that they were reviewing a couple years back that they're going to present to us, or give to me at least, so I can synthesize it.
Got it, yep.
Yeah. So that'll be helpful as well. Thank you.
so you think you'll be ready on the 25th, just a couple weeks?
I can't speak for my boss, but I
Okay,
can say that
yeah.
our plan is that we had planned to attend, and mostly
Good.
for listening, but if there's information that's given to us to be able to evaluate before the 25th, then I'm sure we'll be able to give you some comments.
Yeah, absolutely. And anything that you've heard tonight that you think there's information that I should know that's in the background, because I am walking into this fairly new.
absolutely.
And I do have certain assumptions that have been proven wrong. So I'm happy to listen and learn from anything that I might get wrong.
Yeah.
This is probably for you. Does that option 4 take away the parking for the medical employees also?
Could you go back to option 4, sorry?
Sure. It is over the medical
Yes,
area.
yep.
It does.
So that could be either structured or underground or something like that to allow that pad to be developable. Or they could potentially add in parking units that are nearby, like if somehow they were able to get rid of the water tower or something like that. That's big. That's probably not possible.
We shouldn't accept nothing until we hear from no.
No.
Are we out of options?
Those are the four. I mean, that's a good chunk of the area that was left, to be honest. The only area that I didn't really discuss was the area that's between the stadium and the river to the south. And the reason I didn't really include that was, I mean, no real reason. I mean, you could certainly put it there if you wanted to. I just thought that there were other options that either limited impact or provided a better economic development scenario. That's the only reason I didn't.
I mean, in other parts of town,
Oh, yeah. So if tonight I just wanted to laser focus on the radius, because so much of what we have to do is within that half-mile radius of the train station. So I wanted tonight to just focus on that. And if you want to choose option 2, that is one where you create sub-districts elsewhere. And I've already run the numbers on several of them, but like I said, a lot of them are built significantly lower density than what's required under this. So you're opening yourself up to risk if you do it that way. But if it's a recently developed project, then it probably won't be demolished and rebuilt overnight. They would make no economic sense to do that.
But those areas, they also have to be the 0.5-mile radius then?
No.
Oh, they don't?
No, the sub-districts do not. So you can take like at least, if it's at least 5 acres, you can have like a little sub-district that's outside the radius. But that can only be up to 60% of the land area. But because there's a 50% contiguity requirement, like it doesn't make sense to have over 40%.
Sounds like you're right.
You don't have to build anything, but you have to allow it by right. So there's nothing we can do if somebody decides to build it there.
And they would build 23 units on that acre.
They could potentially, yeah.
Just a quick question. Hopefully it doesn't sound silly. If you took option 4, we know maybe some of these areas, it would not, they probably maybe would not break down a practice field, or, I mean, just, or some of these areas
Right.
to put the housing. What if you did the combo and took already, like, overlay districts, did some of, is that just, that's 50 acres, right?
Yep,
That
that's
you're just-
51 or
okay, but what
52.
if you just did 40% of that in the areas that will be highly unlikely to
They have to be
a-
contiguous. That's the rub.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what, yeah, just another, option 5.
Yeah.
Open, okay.
I mean, I guess you could break it down if you are comfortable with doing, no, there's really no way to do it where it's 50% contiguous. It's kind of half and half with like a buffer between.
For what it's worth, I don't like 1 or 2, but
Okay.
I'd be willing to look at 3 and 4.
Okay. All right. I'm going to let you guys think for a little bit. I'm going to give you 3 minutes since we had some more discussion. If you all don't mind, I think we're going to wrap it up because we're almost at the hour. And I think that the best way to do this, I think that the best way to do this is,
No, I appreciate that.
I agree with you.
Thanks.
so thank you all. We're almost at the hour, so I do want to get you all out of here in good time. I think the easiest way to do this is to go through these options again, and then I'm going to ask you if this is one of your top 2. That way we'll have like a figure that we can count, and that'll give me a good feel for like the attitude of the room and which ones I'm going to do more work on. I'm also going to wait to listen to see if other residents come in throughout the week and tell me their thoughts via email or call. So, it might change a little bit, but I will be transparent about what people are telling me. So option 1, just to remind you, is the option that was submitted at Springtown meeting. This is an area that's predominantly surface lots, but it also includes a rental car outbuilding as well. It is a self-contained over 50-acre district, and it's located north of Route 1. Option 2 is an option that would involve zoning over Patriot Place and surface lots to the north, but it doesn't have enough acreage in and of itself to fulfill the 50-acre minimum, so we would have to look for sub-districts elsewhere in the town. Option 3 is an economic development scenario. It would allow for as-of-right zoning for multifamily housing and commercial that would extend all the way to the train station, and it would encompass the area surrounding what is Patriot Place right now. And option 4 is the low-impact scenario. It will encompass the footprint that is already built of Patriot Place, the medical parking area, the field house, and the practice fields to the south. So those are the 4 options. I'm going to go back through again and ask if each option is one of your top 2 choices, okay? So option 1, is it anybody's top 2 choices? Okay, 2. Option 2. Okay. Option 3. Okay. That's 4, 5. And option 4. Okay.
Oh, I voted twice, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. You're supposed to. You're top 2.
Okay.
So I don't think a lot of people voted for your top 2. So raise your hand twice. I apologize for that. So option 1, is it one of your top 2? Raise your hand. Okay.
I don't know if we could do
2.
that.
Option 2. Not one of anybody's. Okay.
I don't think that we're-
Option 3. Okay.
I'm not voting because I'm.
And option 4. Okay. So it looks like options 3 and 4 had the most hands raised, but a lot of people weren't raising their hands at all, which is fine. I'll take the general direction that people want more numbers on options 3 and 4 for now. You can extrapolate from 3 and 4 onto option 2. So that's not going to be a challenge if we decide to carve out sub-districts elsewhere. That won't be as challenging. But I will, for now, not look to option 1 unless people email me specifically and everybody says, no, I absolutely want option 1. So that's the path that I'm going to follow, and I'm going to spend the next 2 weeks trying to get you estimated assessments of future tax revenues that we could get from those areas, as well as the increased cost to services. All right?
Thank you very much,
All right.
Catherine.
Thank you so much. Feel free to take anything and everything that's on your tables. I really appreciate all of your insights. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you.